Welcome to the third part in my BARRONS 333 high frequency GRE words. And as I always say, I think this is great for anyone studying English, not just those studying for the GRE. And it's going to be quicker than my other vocab videos. I'm just going to read the word and definition and give one example sentence from my own knowledge of how I would use that word. Starting with officious. And the definition is meddlesome, excessively pushy in offering one's services. So if a waiter came up to you and kept asking you, oh, do you want this? Or do you want that? Or do you want this? They would be being officious, meddling, getting in the way, pushing their services when they're not required. Officious. Onerous. Burdensome. Climbing that mountain was truly onerous. It was such a heavy burden on me, hard to do. Next word is opprobrium. Great word. Infamy, vilification. She faced incredible opprobrium for her remarks. They just attacked her left, right and centre. She was vilified, attacked, denigrated, castigated. She faced opprobrium. Oscillate. Vibrate, pendulum-like, waver. She oscillated between this plan and the other one. She couldn't make up her mind. Was it one or the other? She was oscillating all the time. Wavering. Oscillate. Ostentatious. Showy, pretentious, trying to attract attention. That house in the street that's painted gold is so ostentatious, so showy, pretentious, trying to attract attention. Ostentatious. Paragon. A model of perfection. Often used in the phrase, a paragon of virtue. She is a paragon of virtue, just a model of good behaviour. Partisan. One-sided, prejudiced, committed to a party. So non-partisan means independent, not siding with one party or another. Whereas partisan means favouring one of the parties, political parties. Prejudiced, biased, one-sided, which is where you get the word partisanship, a state of conflict between the parties. Pathological, pertaining to disease, anything where it goes to such an extreme that you could almost call it a disease. He is a pathological liar. She is a pathological cheat, does it so much that you could almost call it a disease. Paucity. Scarcity. There is a paucity of resources in this town. A scarcity, a lacking of resources. Paucity. Pedantic. Showing off learning, bookish. Why are you being so pedantic, correcting every small mistake? Or that teacher's being a bit pedantic by correcting every tiny spelling mistake. Is that pedantic? Is that showing off her learning? Or is that being too critical? Pedantic. Penchant, or pronounced in a fancy way, penchant. It's a French word, meaning strong inclination, liking. She has a penchant for outdoor activities. Loves doing them, and is often quite skilled at doing that thing. Great, very fancy word there. Penchant. Penury. Severe poverty, stinginess. If you have a paucity of wealth, you could say that you are in penury, severe poverty, lacking wealth. Penury, penurious. Perennial. Something long-lasting. To be honest, it was a perennial occurrence. Happened all the time. Get used to it. It's perennial. It won't go away. Perfidious. Treacherous, disloyal. Perfidy is treachery. So if something is perfidious, it's treacherous, breaching a trust, being disloyal. Perfidious. Perfunctory. Lovely word. Superficial, not thorough, lacking interest, care, or enthusiasm. The TSA agent gave a perfunctory look at the tourist, not really caring, no enthusiasm for the job, not really doing things thoroughly. Perfunctory. Permeable. Penetrable, porous, allowing liquids, usually water or gas, to pass through. Permeable rock is rock that water can pass through. Permeable. Pervasive, spread throughout. Spam is now pervasive on all email accounts. It's pervasive. It pervades. Pervasive. Phlegmatic, lovely word to pronounce there. Calm, not easily disturbed. Composed. Phlegmatic in a crisis, composed, calm in a crisis. Piety, or pious. Devoutness, reverence for God. If someone is pious, they display piety, being devoted to their cause, usually solemn, serious commitment to their religion or beliefs. It's a positive word though, unlike a word such as dogmatic, which means hard and unwavering and stern. Pious or piety is a praising word, being like a saint. Pious, piety. Placate, to pacify, conciliate, calm down. A placid lake is calm and still, so to placate someone is to make them calm, still, slowed down. Placate, pacify, linked to the word peace. Pacifist, peace, pacify, to make someone peaceful. Plasticity, quite a hard word to pronounce. The ability to be molded. The brains of babies displays amazing plasticity, amazing ability to be molded and shaped by their environment. Plasticity. Platitude. A trite remark, commonplace statement. For example, some people would say that sending thoughts and prayers is a commonplace or cliched statement after someone dies. A trite, banal or cliche remark in some people's eyes. That would be a platitude, a cliche. Next word. Plethora, wonderful word. Excess or overabundance. There is a plethora of food on this table, a feast, an overabundance of food. Plethora. Plummet, to fall sharply. The stock market plummeted on the bad news. Porous, very much like permeable, full of pores where things can seep through, like a sieve. If the roof is porous, then it lets in water. Pragmatic, practical, as opposed to abstract or idealistic. They just focus on the nuts and bolts, the key day-to-day details, not the pie-in-the-sky stuff. They are practical and pragmatic. Preamble, an introductory statement. Pre means before, so a preamble is a statement made before the main event. Sometimes used insultingly like, skip the preamble, just get straight to the point. Preamble. Precarious, uncertain, risky, usually involving danger. Standing so close to the edge of the cliff is a bit precarious, a bit risky. Or I find myself in a precarious position, an uncertain position. Precipitate. Rash, premature, hasty, sudden. Such a precipitate departure would cause a lot of problems. Why do we have to be so sudden? Why can't we do it slowly? Precipitate. Precursor. A forerunner, a harbinger. It's a precursor of doom. For some people, seeing a black cat is lucky. For other people, it's a precursor of a bad day. A forerunner, a signal, an omen of a bad day. Precursor. Presumptuous. Arrogant, taking liberties. Don't be so presumptuous. Why do you assume you're going to win? You might lose. You shouldn't be so arrogant, so presumptuous, presuming things. Prevaricate. To lie. More accurately, I would say it's to be evasive, to beat around the bush, not to be forthright. To dodge the question, to prevaricate or mislead. Pristine. Characteristic of earlier times, primitive, unspoiled. A pristine forest is one that hasn't been touched by any industry or human activity. Characteristic of earlier times, pristine. Probity, uprightness, incorruptibility. If you're investigated for probity, you're investigated to check if you are upright, that you haven't been corrupt or practicing any malfeasance. Probity. Problematic. You can probably guess this one. Doubtful, unsettled, questionable, perplexing. Possibly causing problems. This might be problematic for us. Might cause us a few problems. Or that opinion is somewhat problematic, somewhat questionable, doubtful. Problematic. Prodigal. Wasteful, reckless with money. The famous parable of the prodigal son was one who involved a son who wasted a lot of his inheritance, but then came back and asked for forgiveness. And they were prodigal because they were wasteful. Wasting money, prodigal. Profound. Deep, not superficial, complete. I came to a profound realization, a deep one about life and the meaning of life, not just about mundane day-to-day details, something much deeper, more profound. Prohibitive. Inclined to prevent or forbid. The price of that handbag is truly prohibitive. It's going to prevent virtually anyone from buying it. Prohibitive. Proliferate. To grow rapidly, spread, multiply. The number of rats on the island proliferated after the humans left, multiplied rapidly. Or you might have heard the expression, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, the spread around the world of dangerous weapons. Proliferate. Propensity, lovely word. A natural inclination. I use this word all the time. I have a propensity for learning new words and then trying to teach them. That's my natural inclination. It's my propensity. Propitiate. To appease. Don't try to propitiate me or appease me. I'm going to do it anyway. Somewhat unusual word and somewhat derogatory because appease usually involves conceding a bit too much. Maybe being a bit weak. Propitiate. Appease. Propriety. Fitness, correct conduct. Does have a slight connotation of being pompous though. If you're displaying proper behaviour, you could be accused of a bit too much propriety, being proper, decorous, upper class, fitness, correct conduct. I don't know why I did an extra British accent there, but it just seemed appropriate. Propriety. Prescribe. To ostracize, banish, outlaw, to forbid something, proscribe it. Different to prescribe, which means recommend it or get it arranged, facilitated. Proscribe, pronounced prescribe, is to banish it, to make it not allowed. To forbid something, push it out. Pungent. Stinging, sharp in taste or smell, caustic. Usually smell, the pungent aroma of those spices. Pungent. Qualified. Limited, restricted. Of course, you understand the definition of being a qualified engineer means you've got qualifications. But qualified can also mean giving a qualified agreement, meaning yes, but with conditions, with stipulations, with caveats. For example, you could say, she gave qualified agreement, saying yes, but with some limitations, some restrictions. It's not an unambiguous yes, it's a qualified yes, limited in scope. Quibble. A minor objection or complaint. He received a bouquet of 100 roses, but one of them was slightly off colour and he complained. That was truly a quibble. When you've had such an amazing victory, don't quibble about the details. Don't have those minor objections or complaints. They're silly compared to the main event. Quibble or quibbling. Quiescent. At rest, dormant, temporarily inactive. linked to the word quiet. It's at rest, it's not doing anything. It's quiescent, like a quiescent volcano, temporarily inactive. Rarefied, made less dense of a gas. So when you go high up on a mountain, the air gets rarefied, less dense, it's harder to breathe. But the word is more often used as rarefied atmosphere, like elite people, upper class people, living high above where the poor people live. So you might say one of those ancient gentlemen's clubs with the leather chairs is a quite rarefied atmosphere. Only the elite upper class hang around there. Rarefied. Recalcitrant. Obstinately stubborn, determined to resist authority, unruly. Like the word intractable, recalcitrant. Not following the rules, being so obstinate and stubborn. Why does my pet have to be so recalcitrant? Next word, recant. To disclaim or disavow, retract a previous statement, openly confess an error. I recanted all my beliefs after hearing what you had to say. Or the witness recanted her testimony after pressure from the gang. To confess an error or retract a previous statement or belief. Recant. Recluse. A hermit, a loner. Someone who spends all their time alone, separated from other people. They are a recluse. A hermit. Often like a monk. Recondite. Abstruse, profound, secret. A bit like the word esoteric. Something that is recondite is a profound, deep secret, often about the universe or some higher levels of thinking. Not something detailed and practical, something abstruse, obscure. Recondite. Refractory. Stubborn, unmanageable. A bit like recalcitrant and obstinate. Refute. Disprove. Your argument was easily refuted by the evidence, easily disproved by it. Refute. Relegate. To banish to an inferior position, delegate, or assign. So you might have heard in sports, if a team gets relegated, they go down a division. But to relegate something can also just mean to downgrade anything, not just a sports team. Move something down a notch, to relegate it. Reproach. To express disapproval or disappointment. She gently reproached him for his ill-mannered remarks. Express disapproval or disappointment. A tone of reproach. Reprobate. Person hardened by sin, devoid of a sense of decency. Someone too far gone, just beyond reaching, beyond hope, a reprobate. Repudiate. Sounds similar but very different. To disown, to disavow. A bit like recant. To repudiate something is to completely disown it. Say it's not you at all. Maybe you used to do it in the past, but not anymore. You have repudiated that activity. Often an activity as much as a belief. Repudiate. Rescind. To cancel. Often an offer. The university rescinded their offer after hearing about the man's activities. To cancel something. You've given it out, but now you want to take it back. Rescind it. Resolution. Determination. Of course, if something reaches a resolution, it reaches a solution. But you can also have resolve and resolution to do something. She's displaying amazing resolution in reaching her goals. Amazing determination. So 2 definitions there. Resolution. Resolve, as we just talked about, can be to resolve an issue, can also be to have resolve, determination, firmness of purpose. Reticent. Reserved, uncommunicative, inclined to silence. Monks are often quite reticent, quiet, inclined to silence. Or no need to be reticent, no need to be so shy. Reverent, respectful, worshipful. In the company of all those high-ranking politicians, he was quite reverent, respectful, almost worshipful of them, to revere them. Sage, a person celebrated for wisdom. Sagacity is wisdom, so someone who is a sage is someone who is celebrated for having that wisdom. Salubrious, healthful, good for your health. Good air and being surrounded by the outdoors and fresh air and trees is salubrious. It's good for your health. Sanction. Very interesting word. It's kind of having opposite definitions. You can sanction and approve something. So in that sense, sanction can mean allow, but sanction can also mean to punish. The UN passed sanctions on this particular country, a punishment. So it can mean to approve, but it can also mean to punish. It depends on the context. Interesting word there. Sanction. Satiate. To satisfy fully. Is your hunger now satiated? Are you satisfied? Satiate. Next word is saturate. To soak thoroughly. If something is saturated, it's covered fully by that thing. After being caught out in the rain, we came back saturated, drenched in water. Saturate. Savour. To enjoy, having a distinctive flavour, smell or quality. Usually it means to savour something slowly, to enjoy something by taking your time. She savoured the wine by only sipping it a little bit at a time. To enjoy something by taking your time, to savour it. To secrete. To hide away or catch, produce and release a substance into an organism. More commonly, secrete, which is very different from secret, means to emit or an exude. You might say an animal secretes a pheromone, releases it out into the air. But the first definition also applies to hide away in the sense of she secreted her diary under the bed. Like puts it there, hoping that no one finds it, to secrete something. So there is a kind of link to secret, I guess. Secrete, two definitions. Shard, a fragment generally of pottery or I would say of glass. If you shatter a bottle, it breaks into shards of glass, fragments. Skeptic, a doubter, someone who suspends judgment until having examined the evidence supporting a point of view. Different from cynic, the word cynical is a bit derogatory. If you call someone cynical, you say they're hardened and they just don't believe anything. Whereas a skeptic is a bit more of a positive word, meaning they can accept things, but only if they're shown evidence. They are a skeptic. Solicitous. Honestly, a word I don't actually use or know. Worried, concerned. Never heard of that before, but solicitous apparently means worried or concerned. What does that even link to? I have no idea. Might look that one up afterwards. Solicitous, worried, concerned. Soporific, great word. Causing sleep, marked by sleepiness. To be honest, that speech was just soporific. It made me go to sleep. Specious, seemingly reasonable but incorrect, misleading, often intentionally. That's a specious argument. Just because you're using fancy words doesn't make you right. You sound intelligent, but you're actually factually wrong. That's specious. Spectrum. Coloured band produced when a beam of light passes through a prism. That's the strict technical definition, but more commonly it's any band that goes from one extreme to another. Like political opinions are on a spectrum from far right to far left. That's a band. Often when people say, well, there's a spectrum, they mean it's not one or the other. It's not one extreme or the other. It could be anywhere in the middle. There's also a phrase saying on the spectrum, used if someone is autistic as well. But yes, spectrum doesn't just have to be about colours, it can be about any band where there's middle ground between the extremes. Spectrum. Sporadic. Occurring irregularly. Not super frequent, sporadic. Stigma. A token of disgrace, a brand. There's a stigma attached to being a certain thing. People look down at it. Stigma. A stint. Thrifty, set limits. That's one definition. To stint on something is to be really parsimonious, thrifty, not generous, not giving very much. But there's also another definition to the word stint. I had a brief stint as a journalist, meaning a brief job role as that thing. For a brief stint, I was an intern, but then I was hired fully. It means a brief period, usually fulfilling some job role, a stint. So two quite different definitions there. Being thrifty, being ungenerous, keeping things reserved, short supply, but also a short time period in a job, a stint. To stipulate, to make express conditions, to specify. He stipulated in his will that the funeral must have certain music, to make conditions, to specify things. If those conditions are not met, it's not going to happen. It's a stipulation. Lovely word. Stolid. Dull, impassive. He's a stolid gentleman. Reliable but dull. Stolid. Striated. Marked with parallel bands, grooved. Quite a technical word, but anything marked by parallel lines cutting through it. I guess you could say striated clouds. You know those clouds that are just layers of lines in the sky? That's striated. Or striated rock, where you can see the lines in the rock. Strut. Walk around pompously and arrogantly, like often in quite a slow manner, where you're just thrusting your hips, you're strutting along, full of pride and hubris, pompous. Strut. Supporting bar. Wait, is that their definition? Oh, that's the definition, supporting bar. Yes, well, that's the technical word you can use in architecture. A strut is something that helps keep the building up, but more commonly you use it to describe someone's walking. They're just strutting around, being all pompous. Wait, is that two different words? I think it was. No, it wasn't. Strut is a pompous walk. It was, and then the next word is strut, the supporting bar. They use the same word, same spelling, with the two different definitions. Oh well, you got 2 for 1 there. Subpoena. More of an American word, but something written down legally that forces a witness to appear on punishment of prison if they don't. So to subpoena someone is to legally force them to appear, because if they don't, they'll be penalised. Subside. To settle down, descend, grow quiet. The music was loud at first, but as they walked over the hill, the sounds subsided, settled down, became quieter. Or the cliff was slowly subsiding into the ocean, gradually settling down and falling away. Subside. There's also a different word you might have thought of, subsidise, and that means to support with money. So the government subsidises certain private sector jobs by giving some of the money to the employers. Quite a different word there. I guess someone in the comments could try to link them, but I'm not sure how they're linked. Next word, substantiate. To establish by evidence, to verify or support. Basically to add substance to what you're saying, to add evidence to it, to substantiate it, to give it more weight. Supersede. To cause to be set aside, replaced, made obsolete. The old Nokia phones were long since superseded by iPhones and Samsung smartphones. Set aside, replaced, made obsolete, superseded. Supposition, a hypothesis, a surmise. I have a supposition that she's hiding something from me. That's my hypothesis, that's my idea, that's what I'm thinking. That's my supposition. Linked to the word, I guess, To suppose, I suppose she is. It's my supposition. Tacit. Understood, not put into words. They both had a tacit understanding that he would go first. It's understood, but they didn't say it out loud. Tangential. Peripheral, only slightly connected, digressing. She went off on a tangent. Her point was quite tangential, not really linked to the main thing that they were discussing. Tangential. Tenuous. Thin, rare, slim. There's only a tenuous link between my activities and hers, like a thin one, tenuous, lacking any real evidence to link them. Like a slim thread, tenuous, weak. Tirade. An extended scolding, denunciation, harangue, a rant, if you will, a tirade. Torpor. Lethargy, sluggishness, dormancy, falling into a soporific torpor, feeling weak, full of ennui, boredom, struggling to do anything, lassitude, lethargy, a torpor. Lots of synonyms there. Tortuous. Winding, full of curves. Not linked to torturing someone. Something that's tortuous is like a winding path up a mountain, full of curves going left, right, up, down, not straightforward, not in a clean line. Tortuous. Tractable. We saw recalcitrant earlier, meant unmanageable. Well, if someone is tractable, that's the opposite. They're easily managed, docile, easy to calm down. Tractable. Transgression. A violation of the law, a sin. Don't commit too many transgressions. Don't violate the law or sin too often. Or, as part of the Lord's Prayer, forgive me for my transgressions, for my violations, my sins. Truculence. Aggressiveness, ferocity. Why are you being so truculent? This truculence is unnecessary. This ferocity, aggressive anger is unnecessary. Why are you so belligerent, truculent? Vacillate. To waver, to fluctuate. To vacillate is to not make up your mind and be torn between the different options. Don't vacillate, just make up your mind. A bit linked to the word oscillate. Do you remember oscillate earlier? Meaning going back and forth between different options. Well, to vacillate, to fluctuate is quite similar. Venerate. Like the word revere that we saw earlier. Close synonym. To venerate something. To revere it, admire it, look up to it. Veracious. Truthful. Like the word veracity means truth. If something is veracious, it's true, correct. Verbose. People accuse me of being verbose, using too many words, often fancy words, to be verbose. In fact, someone accused me of being inebriated with the exuberance of my own verbosity. I'm joking, that's a quote from Churchill, but anyway, you get the point. Verbose is wordy. Viable. Practical or workable, capable of maintaining life. More so the first definition than the other. If someone says something's viable, they're saying, yes, that can work. I believe that can happen. That's not far-fetched. This could actually be made true. It's viable. The second definition, capable of maintaining life forms, is much more rare. Anyway, next word, viscous. Sticky, gluey. I always think like oil. If you hear the word viscous, think of how oil moves, like in a very slow, kind of sluggish, gluey, sticky way. Viscous, viscosity, the amount of oiliness, really. Vituperative, very fancy word to pronounce, vituperative. Abusive, scolding. He left the company because his boss was frankly vituperative towards him. Abusive, always telling him off. Vituperative. Volatile. Changeable, explosive, evaporating rapidly. So if a person is volatile, they're unpredictable, always doing one thing then the other, very unpredictable. But a volatile liquid is one that could change very quickly, a bit like the person. It could suddenly explode in your face. Or, as a bonus definition, you could say the stock market displays a lot of volatility, always going up and down. Volatile. Warranted, justified, authorized. The use of force on that occasion was warranted because the person was behaving like a psychopath. It was justified, authorized, lawful, correct, warranted. Next word. Wary. Very cautious. After being abused so much when they were younger, they're wary of trusting any adult, cautious about it, shy to do it. Or, she is very wary of strangers, cautious around them. Wary. Welter. Turmoil, bewildering jumble. Chaotic, full of turmoil and turbulence. A welter. Whimsical. Lovely word. Capricious, unpredictable, fanciful. Just following their whims, their emotions, their fleets of fancy. They get something into their head, a whim, and then they're whimsical. They just decide to follow it on a whim. But I would say it's quite a positive word, quite a playful word. You're not really criticizing them too harshly. You're just saying they're whimsical. They just follow their feet. They follow their heart. They don't really follow their head as much. Whimsical. And the final word in this list, let's hope it's a good one, zealot. It's a decent one. Zealot is someone who is a fanatic. They're zealous. A person who shows excessive zeal. So originally came from a tribe that all committed suicide on a hill so they wouldn't be captured. I've actually been to that hill in Masada in Israel. But they were the zealots, and so the name lives on as being zealous, being a fanatic, showing incredible or excessive zeal, passion for their cause, never giving up, never wavering in their beliefs. Anyway, I hope this third part was useful to you. And if you've learned any new words, please do leave a like and a comment. And I'm thinking maybe for my next vocab video to do an even longer list. Maybe 1,000 words that you need to know. If that's something that strikes you as appealing, do let me know. Otherwise, have a wonderful day.